The night was cold, bitterly cold, the kind that seeps through layers of worn-out clothing and settles deep in the bones. In a dark alley, tucked between piles of cardboard and a torn blanket, Marcus huddled for warmth. He had been living on the streets for months now, ever since life had dealt him blow after cruel blow. To most passers-by, he was invisible, a shadow, a man without a story worth listening to. But that night, fate placed something at his feet that would change his life forever. Marcus spotted it while digging through a trash bin behind a downtown cafe. A sleek leather wallet, its surface gleaming under the dim streetlight. His first instinct was disbelief. Homeless men like him didn't stumble across wallets like this. Not in this part of town. He picked it up slowly, cautiously, as if it might vanish the moment his fingers touched it. Inside was a thick stack of $100 bills, enough to buy him food for months, maybe even a small room. His heart pounded. He hadn't seen that much money in years. But as he thumbed through the wallet, he also noticed several credit cards, a driver's license, and a business card. The name read Richard Hanover. Marcus recognized it instantly. Hanover wasn't just anybody. He was a well-known millionaire real estate tycoon in the city, a man often featured in magazines and TV interviews. For a moment, Marcus froze. The voices in his head battled fiercely. One told him this was destiny, that maybe God had finally given him a way out. Another whispered that the money wasn't his, that taking would only add another shadow to his already broken life. He stared at the wallet for what felt like hours, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. Finally, he let out a long, shaky breath and muttered, "This ain't mine." With trembling hands, he tucked the wallet under his ragged coat and set off into the night, determined to find a way to return it. The city was nearly silent at that hour, except for the occasional car speeding down the wet streets. Marcus trudged through the cold, clutching the wallet close to his chest like it was both a curse and a gift. Eventually, he found a 24-hour police station. But as he stood across the street, staring at the glowing red and blue lights, doubt crept in. He had been arrested before, for sleeping in public spaces, for loitering, for simply existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. If he walked in with a millionaire's wallet, would they believe he found it, or would they accuse him of stealing? Fear gnawed at him. He turned away. Instead, he decided to head toward the wealthier side of town, where he knew Hanover's company headquarters stood. Maybe, just maybe, there would be someone working late who could take the wallet and get it back to the owner. The journey took him hours, his legs heavy, his body weak from hunger. At last, he reached the towering glass building. Its lights were off, the front doors locked. Defeated, Marcus sank onto the steps and waited. Morning came slowly, painting the sky with streaks of pale gray. Marcus, exhausted, drifted in and out of sleep. Then he heard footsteps, confident, steady, approaching from the side. A security guard appeared, his suspicious eyes narrowing at the sight of a homeless man slumped against the building. Marcus stood quickly, fumbling to explain, holding the wallet out in his shaking hand. The guard's eyes widened when he saw the name on the ID. Without another word, he grabbed the wallet, muttered something into his radio, and disappeared inside. Marcus thought that was it. He would walk away, unnoticed, unthanked, back to his tent under the bridge. But he was wrong. The next morning, just as Marcus was pulling his blanket tighter against the rising sun, he heard a sound he wasn't used to, polished shoes crunching against gravel. He looked up, squinting against the light. There, standing before his makeshift tent, was a man in a tailored suit, his silver hair neatly combed, his eyes sharp and calculating. It was Richard Hanover himself. Marcus's heart stopped. Why would a millionaire be standing outside his tent? Hanover studied him in silence for a moment, then said in a calm, measured voice, "You returned something that most people wouldn't. Do you know what that means?" Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. His throat was dry, his mind racing. Was this a setup? Was he about to be accused of something he didn't do? Or was Hanover here for another reason, one Marcus couldn't yet fathom? The air grew tense. Hanover took a step closer, his polished shoes gleaming against the dirt, his hand reaching inside his jacket pocket. Marcus's eyes followed every movement, his body stiff with fear. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, until Hanover finally pulled something out. It wasn't what Marcus expected. But before he could make sense of what was happening, Hanover spoke again, his words cutting through the morning air like a blade. "I don't believe in coincidences," he said. "And I don't think you should, either." Marcus felt his entire world tilt. What Hanover revealed next would change everything. Marcus's pulse thundered in his ears as he stared at the man towering before him. Richard Hanover, the millionaire whose face had been plastered across billboards, magazines, and news programs, stood no more than a few feet away from his crumbling tent. His immaculate suit and polished shoes were so out of place in this grim alley that it almost felt unreal, like Marcus had slipped into someone else's dream. The silence was unbearable. Hanover's piercing blue eyes never left him, studying him with an intensity Marcus had only ever seen in predators. Then, slowly, Hanover extended his hand, not to strike, not to accuse, but to reveal what he had pulled from his pocket. It was a checkbook. Marcus blinked, his breath catching in his throat. Hanover flipped it open with a calm, deliberate motion, as if he had already decided what he was about to do. "You could have kept it," Hanover said finally, his voice low but sharp, every word cutting through the morning air. "No one would have known. No one would have cared. And yet you didn't." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his fingers tightening around the edges of his blanket. I ain't no thief," he stammered. I just thought it was right." Hanover's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile, though it carried no warmth. "Do you know how many men in your position would have said the same? Do you know how many actually mean it?" He paused, tapping the checkbook against his palm. "Very few." Marcus swallowed hard. He couldn't tell if this was the beginning of a blessing or the start of something dangerous. He wanted to believe Hanover was here to thank him, maybe even reward him. But something about the millionaire's measured tone unsettled him. Then Hanover asked a question that twisted Marcus's stomach into knots. "Why are you out here? A man like you, strong, young, able-bodied. How does he end up in a place like this?" Marcus looked down at the ground, ashamed. Life just got in the way. One mistake led to another. Lost my job, then my home. Tried to get back on my feet, but his voice trailed off, his pride choking him. He hated explaining his failure, hated the pity in people's eyes. Hanover studied him for another long moment, then tucked the checkbook back into his jacket. "Come with me," he said firmly. Marcus blinked in disbelief. "What?" "Come with me, right now." Fear spiked in Marcus's chest. He didn't know this man, didn't know what he wanted or where he planned to take him. I can't just..." "Yes, you can." Hanover's tone left no room for argument. He turned sharply, gesturing toward a sleek black car parked at the end of the alley. A driver in a suit stood waiting, the engine purring softly. Marcus hesitated, glancing at his tent, at the few belongings he owned stuffed into plastic bags. Leaving them behind meant leaving the only life he knew, however broken it was. Hanover turned back, his expression unreadable. "You have a choice, Marcus. Stay here and freeze another night in this alley, or get in the car and see what honesty is truly worth." Marcus's heart pounded. He had no reason to trust a man, but something in Hanover's voice carried weight, authority, and a promise he couldn't quite name. His legs moved before his mind could catch up. Slowly, almost against his own will, Marcus followed him. The driver opened the door, and Marcus slid into the back seat, the leather softer than anything he'd touched in years. The air smelled faintly of cedar and cologne, a sharp contrast to the stench of the streets that clung to his clothes. Hanover entered beside him, and the car pulled smoothly away. For several minutes, silence filled the cabin. Marcus's hands fidgeted in his lap, his nerves gnawing at him. Finally, he worked up the courage to speak. "Where were we going?" Hanover's eyes stayed fixed on the window. "You'll see." The city blurred past, tall buildings giving way to manicured neighborhoods, then the sprawling estates hidden behind iron gates. Marcus had never been to this part of town. It was a world entirely foreign to him, clean, polished, untouched by struggle. At last, the car slowed, turning onto a long driveway lined with towering oak trees. At the end stood a mansion so massive it looked like something out of a movie, its windows gleaming in the sunlight. The car came to a stop, and the driver hurried to open the doors. Marcus stepped out, his knees weak. He had never been anywhere like this. Every part of him screamed that he didn't belong. Hanover led him up the steps without a word, the heavy front doors swinging open to reveal a grand hall with marble floors and glittering chandeliers. Marcus felt smaller than ever, his worn shoes squeaking faintly against the polished stone. "Sit," Hanover instructed, pointing to an armchair that looked more expensive than everything Marcus had ever owned combined. Marcus obeyed, sinking into the plush cushions. His eyes darted around the room, from the gold-framed paintings to the spiral staircase, curling upward like something from a fairy tale. Hanover stood before him, hands clasped behind his back. His voice was calm, almost too calm, when he finally spoke. "Marcus, what you did was rare, but I didn't bring you here to thank you." Marcus's chest tightened. "Then why am I here?" Hanover leaned forward, his gaze unflinching. "Because I want to know if you're as honest as you seem, or if returning that wallet was nothing more than luck." Marcus frowned, confusion clouding his face. "Luck? What do you mean?" Hanover's eyes glinted with something Marcus couldn't quite place. Challenge, suspicion, maybe even danger. "I need someone I can trust," Hanover said slowly. "But trust is not given. It is tested." Marcus's mouth went dry. He didn't understand where this was going, but every instinct in him told him that whatever test Hanover had in mind would be far more than he bargained for. And then Hanover spoke the words that made Marcus's blood run cold. "Tomorrow morning, I'll give you something far more valuable than that wallet. What you do with it will determine everything." Marcus froze. He didn't know what Hanover meant, didn't know whether to be afraid or hopeful. All he knew was that the strange journey he had stumbled into was only just beginning, and that his next choice might decide the rest of his life. Marcus lay awake that night in a lavish guest room within Hanover's mansion, staring at the ceiling high above him. The silk sheets felt too smooth against his skin, almost unreal compared to the rough cardboard and worn blankets he had grown accustomed to. But instead of comfort, unease gnawed at him. Hanover's final words echoed in his mind. "Tomorrow morning, I'll give you something far more valuable than that wallet. What you do with it will determine everything." What did that mean? Why was this millionaire testing him? Marcus had returned the wallet out of conscience, not for a prize or recognition. But something about Hanover's eyes told him this wasn't just about gratitude. It was about something deeper, something dangerous. Sleep eventually came in restless waves, broken by strange dreams of money slipping through his fingers and doors closing before he'd enter. When dawn finally crept through the curtains, Marcus felt more exhausted than when he'd first lain down. A soft knock at the door startled him. Before he could answer, the door creaked open and a housemaid stepped inside with a tray of food, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, and steaming coffee. The smell alone made his stomach twist in hunger. He hadn't eaten a real breakfast in months. "Mr. Hanover will see you shortly," the maid said politely before leaving. Marcus ate quickly, every bite feeling the hollow ache in his belly, but his nerves only sharpened. He didn't know what was coming. An hour later, the same black car from yesterday rolled silently through the gates of the mansion, carrying Hanover and Marcus to an unfamiliar part of the city. The ride was quiet. Hanover sat with the same stoic expression, giving away nothing. Finally, the car stopped in front of a nondescript building downtown. The brick exterior was plain, the sign above the door weathered and faded. Marcus frowned. This was no luxury office or glittering tower, just an ordinary structure tucked between shops and apartments. Hanover stepped out and motioned for Marcus to follow. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and old paper. The lobby was simple, with peeling paint and worn chairs. But as Hanover led Marcus through a side door and down a long hallway, Marcus realized this place wasn't as ordinary as it looked. At the end of the hallway sat a small room with nothing but a table, 2 chairs, and a locked metal briefcase resting in the center. Hanover gestured for Marcus to sit. "This," Hanover said, placing a key on the table, "is your test." Marcus eyed the briefcase warily. "What's inside?" Hanover leaned forward, his piercing gaze fixed on Marcus. $500,000 in cash. Enough to change your life overnight. Marcus's throat went dry. He couldn't speak. "You can take it right now," Hanover continued calmly. "Walk out that door, disappear, start fresh anywhere you choose. No one will stop you." Marcus blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. You're just giving it to me?" Hanover shook his head slowly. "I didn't say I was giving it to you. I said you could take it. But here's the other option. Leave the briefcase closed. Walk away without a cent. If you do that, you'll prove to me that returning my wallet wasn't luck, but character. And if that's the case, I'll offer you something far greater than money." The room fell silent. Marcus's heart hammered as his eyes darted between the key, the briefcase, and Hanover's unreadable face. $500,000. The thought was intoxicating. He could buy a home, new clothes, start over. He could finally stop fighting for scraps, stop sleeping in alleys, stop feeling invisible. The temptation screamed at him, louder than hunger, louder than pride. But another voice, quieter, steadier, spoke in his chest. What if this was a trap? What if Hanover was waiting to see whether greed would win? What if taking the money meant proving every stereotype people had ever thrown at him? Marcus's palms were slick with sweat. His whole life had been a struggle, and now, in one moment, he had to choose between two paths, one paved with instant wealth, the other with uncertainty, but maybe, just maybe, redemption. Finally, Marcus pushed the key away. His voice was hoarse when he spoke. "I can't take it. I won't." Hanover studied him, his expression unchanged. "Why?" "Because money don't fix everything," Marcus said quietly. "I'd rather earn my way back than steal, even if you're giving me the chance. If I take it, I'll just be proving that the only reason I returned your wallet was because I thought I'd get something out of it. But that's not who I am." The room seemed to grow still, the weight of his words hanging in the air. For the first time, Hanover's stern expression cracked. Slowly, a smile spread across his face, not mocking, but genuine. "That," Hanover said softly, "is the answer I was hoping for." He reached for the briefcase, pulled out the key, and unlocked it himself. The lid swung open, revealing stacks of crisp $100 bills neatly bundled inside. Marcus's breath caught at the sight, but Hanover slid the case aside. "You see, Marcus, money is the easiest gift I could give, but it is also the cheapest. What I truly need is someone I can trust, not because of what they might gain, but because of who they are when no one is watching." Marcus frowned, still confused. "Why me?" Hanover leaned back, folding his hands. "Because men like you are rare, and I intend to change that." He paused, letting his words sink in, then continued. "I want to offer you something better than cash. A job, a home, and a chance to rebuild your life with dignity. You'll start at the bottom, like everyone else. It won't be easy, but if you're willing to work, I'll open doors you never imagined possible." Marcus felt his chest tighten, his eyes stinging. For years, he had been told he was nothing. For years, people had looked past him like he didn't exist. And now this man, this millionaire, was offering him not charity, but opportunity. Tears welled up, but Marcus blinked them away, nodding firmly. "I'll work. I'll prove myself." Hanover extended his hand across the table. Marcus hesitated for a beat, then clasped it. The handshake was firm, final, like the sealing of a pact. In that moment, Marcus realized something. It wasn't the wallet or the money, or even Hanover's wealth that had changed his life. It was a choice he had made when no one was watching. The choice to do the right thing when the wrong thing would have been so much easier. Weeks later, Marcus stood in a press uniform behind the reception desk at one of Hanover's high-rise office buildings. His own apartment key jingled in his pocket. Each morning he woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Each evening he laid his head down knowing he was building something real. And though he never forgot the hunger, the cold, or the loneliness of the streets, he carried those memories like scars, reminders of how far he'd come, and how one act of honesty had turned his life upside down. The city still bustled with people who might never know his story. But Marcus knew, and Hanover knew, and sometimes that was enough.